All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this hopefully final budget session for Randolph County for our 2020-21 budget. I think all of you are here in one way or another, one reference or the other relative to our decisions tonight, and we welcome you. And for our folks at home, we say welcome to you. We are live streaming, and it will be on Facebook also, and the county website going forward. We'll say we have a new sound system tonight. So I think you can tell we're coming across a little bit louder, and hopefully our folks at home will be able to hear us a little bit better. We thank our IT department for made a comment. I guess he figured he better spend the money or he was going to lose it. So but we have a new sound system for us and new screens for viewing our agenda as we consider our business here tonight. So we welcome you. Said this is I think our fourth and final budget hearing tonight for 2020-21, and we have a few items to discuss. We have some housekeeping to take care of. It always comes in correspondence to the end of the fiscal year, and we'll lead us through those changes and motions that we have to make tonight to sort of close out this fiscal year. So welcome each one of you, and we will proceed with our closeout budget amendments. Will?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. This is the time of year we kind of tweak a few of the budgets. We've got several funds that just need a couple of amendments. The first one, you want me to cover these all at one time, or you want me to take individual?
Do them all at once.
You want me to read them all at one time or individually?
Yes, you just go through the list.
Okay. The first one was Article 46 sales tax collections. We have been transferring whatever we do get to the capital reserve. The budget amendment before you is probably a lot more than what we'll need, but we don't really know what those collections for April, May, and June are going to be. We'll get those distributions in July, August, and September. The next one was the Project Safe Neighborhoods. That budget does run pretty successfully during the year. There's a few potential costs we think we might want to be able to cover by the end of the year. That's $2,600. Just like the Article 46 sales tax, the fire district fund, we want to make sure that we have enough budgeted where we can distribute the fire district dollars that we do collect. So this is to make sure we have enough to be able to distribute.
Now, is that distributed among departments or?
The fire districts are, each district has its own amount.
Right.
So some districts may need a little bit more, some may not.
Okay.
Excuse me. Northgate Capital Project. We had some interest income we can record that will cover approximately the cost to demolish the theater that we did up there, and then moving some $27,000 from miscellaneous to professional services. We still have some design work up there to make sure that we use the facility to the best of our advantage. And then the last one was Randolph County Community College Project. We're just shifting $25,000 from construction to professional services, and that will pretty much close out that fund.
All right. Any questions of Will on any of these closeout budget amendments? Do I have a motion that we approve those closeout?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we approve closeout budget amendments for fiscal year 2019-2020 as presented by Mr. Massey.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Further discussion or questions? Those in favor will say aye. Aye. And opposed, no. And they are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Yes. All right, next is our capital improvement plan.
Just a reminder of what is coming up in this current year. We have two projects still that we have in our capital improvement plan that will be active this current year. First is the Asheville High School renovation piece. That is projected to be about $28 million. we would issue debt next spring to accomplish that project. And then we're in the middle of the renovation for the jail, and we'll probably need to borrow about another $9 million to finish that out next fall. The courthouse project, that renovation is currently on, being suspended until we see what the effects of the virus is on the finances.
That would be one of those, the courthouse could be one of those things that we consider under the stages, various stages that
I think we'd have to
proposed in your
see some
budget,
recovery and make sure we felt good that we didn't
depending
need
on
it
how our revenues go for the
for
year.
purposes. So
But right now, it's on
it's on hold.
hold.
Yes, sir.
All right. And there's really no action on that. Anybody have a question of how, of Will, relative to the capital improvement plan? Okay. Next item is to adopt our school and fire district tax rates. First is the fire departments, and we have 4 departments who are requesting increases. Farmer, which basically is going back, I think last time they went to the revenue neutral, and this is like 0.003 of a penny, goes from 0917 to 0920. Northeast, which is Liberty, requesting to go from 12 to 15 cents. Roundham and Sophia from 12 to 15 cents. And West Side from 13 to 14.5 cents. All the other departments remain at their current rates. So I think we should take these individually. So, and I'd say I've gone through this several times in my tenure on this board, and we've typically looked at a commissioner who represents that area as to support or not supporting those tax increases. I know it doesn't, if Liberty gets a tax increase, the folks in Liberty or in that fire district pay the tax increase. The rest of the county does not. So we have looked to the commissioner who represents that area, certainly for their position, support or don't support those requests. So the first one is the Farmer Fire District request.
I make a motion, we accept that increase.
All right. Motion, have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Kenny? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those no. Next is Liberty, from 12 to 15 cents. I think some of the fire departments are here. If anybody wants to have a question, we would allow that. Or
I think I've worked with Liberty pretty much over the last couple of years, and talked to the mayor out there and former fire chief and council members, and so basically they're needed because of the lack of volunteers, and to provide the fire service in that area, it's warranted. I think they delayed it a year or two to get to this point, but now's the time. I really haven't heard a lot of issues with that, so
Right.
I'll move that we accept the increase from 12 cents to 15.
Okay. Have a second to the motion.
Second.
Second. Commissioner Haywood. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And it is approved. Next is the Randall and Sophia. Those departments merged a few years back, and Sophia was always one of those departments kind of squeezed in by everybody around them, and not much of anywhere to go. So that's the request, from 12 to 15 cents. We have somebody here from Randall, I know that's in your area.
Yes, back when they merged with Sophia, that's when they went to the 12-cent rate. And so they've had clear objectives, and they had have planned, have the long-range planning in place and are wanting to do the new station because they are very, very cramped for space. So that's been, I don't have my notes right in front of me, 2016, 14? 2014, when they merged, did that merge and went to the 12-cent rate, which is where they've been since then. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the new rate, 15 cents.
We have a second to the motion.
Second.
Any other discussion or questions? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And it is approved. The fourth one is West Side Fire District from 13 cents to 14.5 cents.
Okay. This is not that great an increase, I realize that, but I have had some calls about it from some citizens that question some of the decisions that have been made financially. I have gone back and done some research, looked back several years, 7 of the last 10. You have requested increases and have been approved 4 times. So, in view of some of the concerns that have been expressed, some of the I don't see the same clear objectives and planning that I do with some of the other departments. Maybe it's there and I've missed it. Maybe I need to do a better job communicating. But from what I have seen, what my research has shown, I feel like that it would be wise to wait on this one. So I would move that we deny raising this tax rate hike.
All right, motion is to deny the request to increase. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Any other discussion? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, that takes care of our fire districts tonight. So next is our Archdale Trinity supplemental school tax, 922 cents. That's my area. I make a motion that we approve that and that it stay at its current rate of 922.
We need one motion to do the rest of them that don't have changes.
Do what?
We
Oh,
need one
fire
motion
department.
to do all of the rest.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, yes. All right, so we need a motion to approve all the other departments with no rate change.
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
Question, discussion. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
No, and they are approved. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve the Archdale Trinity Supplemental Tax District, 922 cents.
Second.
Any other
Did you make
discussion?
the motion?
I made a
Sorry.
motion.
Okay, yeah, I'll second that.
Kenny made the second. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those no. It's approved. Next is our Ashboro City Schools Supplemental Tax District. Commissioner Kidd.
I'd be glad to make that motion to approve the Ashboro Supplemental Tax District at .1439.
Second to the motion.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those no. And they are approved. We're going to slow down here in just a minute, folks. All right, some fee schedules. I'm going to say those first 3 items, they are all with no changes. We do have to approve them for them to go into effect and remain in effect July 1st without someone wanting to deal with those individuals. I accept a motion to approve all 3 of the first 3 of those.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion and second is that we approve the building, electrical, and plumbing permit fees, emergency service ambulance fees, and the planning and zoning fees, all of which remain at their current fee schedule. Any other discussion? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those no. And next is our public health. there's several of those, and a few of them were changes. So, anybody have a question about any of those? I don't see anybody from the health department here. Will, do you have anything to add to this? You can see those on the first page from $38 to $40, $2. I think the biggest ones are $5 for some drug screening. I think the $5 is the biggest ones I see.
There, Mr. Chairman, there were a few new things added, especially in the dental area, which I found very reasonable.
Yep. I would say we're still more than competitive with our fees. We always have been. Any other questions? I entertain a motion on the public health, these changes.
I make a motion that we approve the public health, adopt their fee schedule.
Second.
Discussion or questions? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those no. And the public health fees are approved. And now, for this other's been pretty procedural and just taking care of business, so to speak, and now we're back to our discussion of the budget that was presented to us, I guess about 4 weeks ago, that we have been considering and through various our meetings, department presentations, outside agencies, et cetera, the fire departments who did come to make presentations, our schools, sheriff. I just want to say, I think this is the 38th county budget that I have worked on. And without question, it's the most difficult. We've had tough times before, and we cut substantially for three years or so. But we knew that. We knew what was there. We knew what was taking place. This time, we don't know. We are working in the dark, so to speak. We don't know where our revenues are going to go. We don't know how long people are going to be out of work. It is, I hate to say it, but it's a guessing game. Now, I have a lot of confidence over these years in those folks that are doing the guessing, and I think their guesses are with considerable thought and consideration and study and looking at historical circumstances. But, and I think those of you that have been here, some have been here, I think, all these meetings, when we look, the manager and the finance officer presented our budget in stages. I mean, they recommended that we look at it in stages. So this budget it includes stages 1 and 2. And stages 1 and 2 provide those core services that we have to have every day to deliver benefits, services to the citizens of this county. And to the most critical areas that involve public safety. Those have been included without cuts as we have developed this budget. Stages 3 and 4 deal with the COVID-19 expenses that we know where we are, but here again, we don't know where that's going to go. We don't know how our caseloads will continue to grow, or maybe they don't grow, but that's in stage 3. And the other thing that's the big question mark for us in stage 4 is just what track will our sales tax revenue take as we go through this year? This budgeting has projected a reduction in sales tax revenue, and we have pretty much used the fund balance to cover that hole of what we, or where we, by best guess, where we think that's going to be. But we get checks as we go through the year, and so we can establish a trend. We can establish sort of how that sales tax revenue is trending. And, we might go out and look at Walmart and Lowe's and think nothing's changed. But when we get the check, then we know how it's changed. But the point being, as we progress through the year, we can track that sales tax number. It is the biggest guess in our budget. And we had I don't want to call it surprise, but we had a good report, a good receipt of sales tax revenue last week for June. And I would remind you, though, that's for sales taxes for the first 3 months, January through March, before really the full impact of the coronavirus hit us and people started losing jobs and places shut down and restaurants closed their doors. So the big question will be, what will the revenues for April, May, and June look like? And then, starting July 1st, what are they going to look like for this budget? So that's stage 4, is to track those sales tax dollars and see how they're trending, and if they are producing or making us feel a little better about our guesses, and maybe even more than better about our guesses. So that would take us to stage 5. This budget does not include any new capital expenditures. Now, you heard Mr. Johnson, Will give us a report that on our capital improvement plan, those are for projects that we already committed to. We've already signed contracts. We are in business for those projects. But there are no other new capital dollars in this budget. So, as we watch the trending of our revenue, one of the first things that we would look at is, are we able to go back and pick up some of those critical capital needs that we did not fund in order to have a balanced budget? And then 6, 7, and 8 are pretty much the same thing, except they deal with current expenses and items that are not included in the budget. And in our discussions tonight, we're going to look at putting back a couple of items from that list, actually, and that would be for our schools and for county employees, and how we would utilize fund balance. I also want to say in support of this board and the members of this board, one of the things that's helped us, we've had a good fund balance. This board has done a good job of managing the business of this county. And it has enabled us to have some reserves that we can use to fill that hole as we go forward. So I commend this board. I commend my fellow board members and their seriousness to the task that we have here. And sometimes we have to say no, or we just, because it's the right decision at that point in time. So that's kind of how we're going to look at this budget this year, and as we go through the year, and track our revenues and see what we can put back. And we know this, unless things got a whole lot worse, we think we can depend on where we are, but there's still some guesses in there. So that's where we are. Vice Chairman Allen and I met with Will and Hal earlier this week. One of the things a couple of things. And again, those of you that have followed our budget process, we've always had an affinity to education in this county. And when I look at counties around us and the requests that they get in millions of dollars, I've been most grateful of the relationship that this board and our two school boards and administrations have in this county. And they are as much a part of our ability to develop a budget that we can live with as this board is relative to their part of it. Because they have worked with us to do the best we can where we are. And that's all we have. And I want the public to know that, and I hope there's a lot of folks at home watching this process right now. But I most appreciative of our school boards, but they have continuation budgets. They get increases in insurance and retirement benefits and things like that, just like the county does, just like other businesses do. And we try to recognize that. And we went through a 3-year pay plan adjustment for our employees in this county that identified where we were not competitive at all in some of our salaries. We didn't jump in there and do that. We did that over 3 different budget years. And then we don't want to have to go backwards. And I can tell you, one of the things I've done, and other commissioners have been a part of that, we've had a crisis management team meeting twice a week as we've gone through this coronavirus process during the last 3+ months. And there's some employees in this county that literally have put their life on the line in order to do their business. Some of the problems that our school people see in the classroom and in the schools, these folks are going into their homes, trying to settle arguments between separated parents and things like that, not knowing at all what kind of environment they're going to be walking into. Our first responders, our firemen that are in this crowd tonight, and not knowing what you're going to find when you answer a call. So we're proposing that we put back a 1%, just a 1% COLA for our county employees. And we're proposing that, and I will tell you, we worked off of the county schools continuation budget, which is $551,000, and we have to match the city school system on a ADM per student basis. That would be $161,439 for the city schools. So that would add $712,439 to this budget. And the employee pay plan, the 1%, $481,000. A couple of other areas that have dealt more harshly, had a more difficult time in this COVID process, the Senior Adults Association and our Aging Services Family Crisis. And just for your knowledge, the family crisis money that we provide, it leverages other money that they can have access to. Basically, a lot of that, we're providing a match, which helps them qualify for some other dollars. So it's proposing another $35,000 to senior adults and another $34,000 to aging services. I think senior adults' original request was for an additional $50,000. The recommendation is $35,000, and the $34,000 would take aging services to a total of $75,000, which would help them leverage some other funds.
The second one's family crisis.
Yeah, the family crisis, yes.
Go ahead.
What?
You go ahead.
The $34,000, and then the senior adults, the $35,000. So that's a total of $69,000. This does add back those public health positions that we approved a couple of weeks ago in our budget, so they could go ahead and start a hiring process. So to balance that, we'll change projections on property tax revenues. We have estimated our collection rate, and historically, for several years, our collection rate on property taxes is in excess of 99%. Puts us at 99.5. And the recommendation was from Will to go to 98. So we added that back to 98.5. And that added some money, it added almost $500,000 back to our revenue side. And then the balance of this comes from fund balance, from our savings account. And so there's some other issues here. There's not a car in this budget for the sheriff. I do want to say that the sheriff changed the hire dates for the new jailers at the expanded jail. We were looking to hire on July the 1st and October. And it's about half and half, 10 one time, 9 the other. That was moved to October and January. So by doing that, that saved $269,500, which would reduce, where we are, would reduce our fund balance, the amount of fund balance that we allocate. In other words, we could add that back to our savings account, or if this board wants to consider anything else in this budget process. Now, I know I've done a lot of talking, but I feel like that we needed to kind of state again where we are with this budget and where we're not. Our schools, their request to us was significantly more than what we have here, but we wanted to at least have them where they could have some expansion of their continuation budget. So the health department, those issues have really been brought to the front during the pandemic. Now, there were some questions about uniforms and the sheriff's budget, so I'm going to stop talking and y'all can talk, or I think you have a list of the things that we worked on, that David and I worked on earlier. So that's where we are.
Well, since we ended, I guess, that introduction there with the sheriff's stuff, and mentioned that, and you're already here, so thank you, Mr. Brubaker. And he gave us a handout that we have kind of talking about, to answer a uniform question that some of us had fielded. You can just start with that. I got a few questions about it.
Just to kind of briefly explain to outfit a detention officer, in years past, we have just looked at non-sworn detention officers, and that's been kind of an issue this year. We've hired at least 15 sworn detention officers, what entitles them to almost everything a normal deputy sheriff would have, as far as a handgun, ballistic vest, vest carrier, duty holster, things like that. And the issue of not looking at that last year, because it is so unpredictable, you have no idea if you're going to hire somebody that is sworn or non-sworn. In other words, they went through BLET. So what we did, instead of looking at that for salaries, which would affect retirement and 401k, we just looked at it for the actual outfitting of a detention officer. So what that helps do during the period of a year, if we were to hire potentially, and it's trending that way, that we are going to hire more law enforcement certified individuals as opposed to just your basic non-sworn detention officer, because of the limited amount of positions that we have available at the sheriff's office. We haven't had a big turnover in the past 6 months, and we're seeing it trend more towards that way. But that's why you can see the cost that they've went up to that magnitude.
So you're saying that's your explanation for why it's 4875 for a uniform for a detention officer who's proposed as non-sworn? I think that was Will's, we were kind of looking into it. You're saying when we looked at the budget, we looked at those detention officers as non-sworn?
That's what was funded.
The way in your proposed. So, yeah, well, let me ask you this, I'm circling around, so I got a couple questions. So, is there a difference in the salary and benefits for sworn versus non-sworn?
The benefits of retirement would be different, and salary is
Salary would be pretty much the same as of right now. Detention officers, whether you're sworn or non-sworn, remains the same.
But the non-sworn officers are not eligible for the additional retirement benefit
Correct.
that the state of North
It's only
Carolina
local.
imposed on us.
Yes, sir.
And so anyway, to reiterate, so you said this fiscal year, you have hired 15 new detention officers that are sworn versus otherwise?
As opposed to the year before, I don't have those numbers, but
Okay.
yes. So last year, when we were looking at our positions, we only did that. We did the non-sworn, and we looked at the uniform cost, and we didn't account for any type of sworn detention officers. I was trying to look at that this year to help us out if that ends up happening.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and ask. So if you're a non-sworn detention officer, what do you get? 3 short sleeve shirts, 3 long sleeve shirts, 3 pair of pants, and what else?
As far as clarification on that, I mean, I can't really name everything. OC spray, OC holder, a radio, aspeton holder, aspeton, handcuff pouch.
You get those things as non-sworn detention officer?
From my understanding, yes, sir.
So do you carry handcuffs in the detention center? I'm just asking.
I would have to get more clarification. My apologies.
So the portable radio, for example, is that for a patrol officer?
Well, patrol officers, they carry the APX 4500. As far as detention officers, they carry the APX 900. It's standard.
So that 22 for a portable radio, that's a number whether you're sworn or non-sworn?
No, so the difference is the cost for the radio on here is merely for detention officers in general. So what they happen on shifts down at the jail, once they're done with their radio, they put it back up for the next shift to get.
Okay.
The APX 4500s are more developed for the county and the limited ability of signals. So they are cheaper than a typical law enforcement radio.
So I figured that, I don't know, but I figured that the radios and communications at the detention center were part of, the cost of the detention center and the upgrades we're making in, equipment and IT and stuff. But I don't know, So, just looking at the 4875, and it kind of going back to Darrell's explanation, just in phases, is, we ask all the departments and everybody, and Will was really good at guiding us through this, to tighten their belt and look at things a little bit differently. Out of our 23 departments that reported, 11 or 12 of them didn't ask for anything at all. And I know things go up and there's different things, but, just plugging in that 4875 number, I'm uncomfortable with that. Now, if we get down the road and you're hiring a wave of people in January and 2 or 3 of them are sworn and need to make something, that's where at that part of the phase, like Will talked about when we set it out, I'm fine with coming back saying, hey, we're in a bind and we got 3 or 4 sworn guys, it's going to take another $3,000. But I would rather see as it was presented and as it was proposed by Hal and Will, a number for a non-sworn detention officer for that uniform budget. Because times 19, that's a lot of money for the taxpayers. And of course, I was trying to kind of ask you those questions about what do they basically require, other than 3 pants, 3 shirts, and 3 summer shirts, but I don't know which other of these items they require. So I don't want to tell you, hey, that comes up to $500, it's $500. I don't think that's fair. But also, I really don't want to approve 4875 today. Now, if we need 3 or 4 sworn guys and that's how it turns out and push comes to shove, I think we can look at those phase things, and maybe things are better in December, and we can talk about that, but I don't know what number to plug in. I mean, has anybody got an idea?
Justin,
I mean, I know they're not using a service weapon in that whole belt, you know, and the holster for that, and the holster for the magazines, and 2 or 3 other things, but, you know,
Well, if you go back and you look at my figures for the 2019-2020 year, that 3,757, that was for a completely non-sworn detention officer. Is that what
is
you're
that
proposing?
for a non-sworn detention officer?
Correct.
The 3757?
Correct.
why would that not be
Say that again, sir.
appropriate this year if it, for a non-sworn?
Would that be appropriate for this year? I would have to look at the cost again, but I'm assuming that would get us by, so to speak.
So you're looking, really just, the difference is roughly $1,000.
Yeah, that, at 19,
officer.
the 19 positions, that's $21,242.
And a lot of this that goes into looking at these figures are, you know, your guess and your forecasting. For example, our radios, last year, the 900 series, they were $1,800. They jumped up $400. Those are the kind of issues that you try to forecast for and prepare for, but it is extremely difficult.
So, but your narrative down here, Justin, says that the difference in those two numbers is with a handgun, a bulletproof vest, the outer carrier, radio cost increases, and general product cost increases.
Yeah, my apologies, sir. That is actually incorrect because there's a number of other items that go on there. That was just some notes that I scribbled down at the last minute, so I apologize.
Well, I'm just trying to come up with a number that we can use for non-sworn officers. I mean, that's my goal. I mean, just honestly. So,
Well,
David, if you...
I mean, we got a $134 million budget. I don't know that 19,000 is 19,000, but with the projections that you have to figure, I mean, I don't think it's a make or break one way or the other. Your point's well taken, but I just, I don't know if you want to knock $19,000 out, what is it, 21,000?
21,242.
You want to take that out?
Well, if you're honestly telling me 3757 is a non-sworn outfit, I guess
That was projected from last year's fiscal budget, yes, sir.
I'll take that number, absolutely. For the
21,000.
taxpayers, $19,000 is $19,000.
It's
21.
$21,000.
$21,000.
I'm rounding.
Okay, all right, you're rounding. So, so I would propose to change that number if that needs to be in the form of a motion.
All right, we have a motion that the budget item relative to uniform supplies be set at $3,757 per 19 positions, which is $71,383. That is a savings of $21,242 from what's in the budget. Now, there's also a savings in the budget of $269,500 because of changing those start dates. So now we have saved out of the proposed budget $290,742, which would reduce the amount of the appropriated fund balance.
All right,
So instead of 479, 290, 742, 3.
Chairman, before you start ciphering too much,
Yeah.
I know when we talked early this week about the lack of capital in the budget, and I think it's appropriate to try to be frugal at this point. I'm just very concerned about adding roughly, at this point, about $4 million out of, taking $4 million roughly out of fund balance for this budget next year, not knowing what's going on. But I think in the past, before I served on this board, and even afterwards, in the last 5.5, 6 years, it's dangerous when you get behind on capital expenditures, because it's hard to make those up, even in good times. And what we had talked about was moving the cost savings by deferring the detention officers' hiring to allow those to be moved into vehicles for capital for the sheriff's office for the vehicles. So what they saved, they would get back in vehicles. It's about 3/8 of what they were requesting. But if you don't continue to update, I know Donovan is also looking at some ambulance as well. So I just think it's important that we don't kick things down the road too far. We beat the can to death. I made comments, I think, last year at the budget meeting that this was going to be a tough budget year, and that was before the world changed in March. But I will say that we'll see where we wind up. I think it's important, getting away from the sheriff's budget. I think it's important for the schools. Schools are going to be in an interesting situation on how they're going to function going forward. I wish we could get that supplement out there, Dr. Gainey. But it's going to be tough. Now's going to be tough, and next year's even going to be tougher, I'm afraid, depending on what happens. Same thing with the employee pay plan. The 1% COLA, we worked hard for 3 years trying to get, with the market surveys coming up, to get those adjusted. And if we let that go, then we're behind again.
Yep.
And it is competitive. We're having to have competition with other counties that are have more resources than what we got. So we need to remain competitive. We talked about the health positions. The other two adjustments, everybody's going to have to, it's going to be tough. And next year's going to be tougher. So there's a lot of one-time, I know the legislature's talking about one-time funding. I know some counties have basically, for all their other appropriations other than county government, they have, I think Moore County has eliminated that. I hope we don't have to do that, but as we go through the budget process, as it plays out, actually, we can make adjustments, but I think we need to be conservative. But I think we do need to be cognizant and provide some funding for the capital, because if we don't, we're really going to kick the can down the road
The original request,
for vehicles.
the original request, Will, wasn't it about $875,000 for vehicles?
4,962.
Yeah, yeah. And this, David, you're suggesting that the savings from the sheriff be used?
For the detention, the deferral of the detention, be moved into capital to buy what vehicles that can be bought with that amount of money.
Are you talking about?
What? Go ahead.
Are you talking about just vehicles for the sheriff's department?
Just sheriff's office.
So no vehicles for other county departments that have requested them?
I was going from what was on the manager's budget. Sheriff saved some money from his budget, deferring that,
Right, okay.
then he would get
I
the
was-
benefit for that.
Can I ask, what are these replacement vehicles? Are these new added on to the fleet already vehicles?
My understanding it would be replacement
Yep.
vehicles.
Correct, they are replacement vehicles. The last vehicles that we looked at on our budget meeting on June the 11th, there were a number of vice vehicles that we needed to be replaced. We haven't replaced them in 4 to 5 years, and they're in great need of additional vehicles. The others were just bits and pieces of actual patrol vehicles, specialty vehicles for our canines, And that's pretty much it.
You got any questions?
You'd have to, at that, you'd still have to make some tough choices about which one, 'cause I think at the average of those, your original request, that might get 8, maybe 9 vehicles.
Yes, sir. What we did is when we looked at those numbers, we calculated how many vehicles we could get in total, maybe saving some cost with some possibly used in-car radios. So it was right at 8 vehicles that we could get, 8 to 9.
If you did it like that. If you did it like
Yeah, I
that.
mean, if you move that money,
Well, I know,
You're talking about the $200,000 money.
the two.
269.
369. Say that again.
The 269,500, that was the savings from changing the hire dates.
Right.
That was on that spreadsheet
That'd be 8 vehicles?
we sent out.
capital for vehicles.
Yep.
I mean,
That was on the spreadsheet that we
Yeah.
sent out.
we did see that. And I know Commissioner Haywood, I think, asked the question about, how much money you had in forfeiture money, which was 331-ish,
313.
313.
313, okay.
Yeah.
Had a number in,
This is exactly.
So anyway, and, I had, have had a discussion about that. I think in this budget season this year and kind of where we are, it's 313 you have, which is more than 269, so arguably you could buy another vehicle with that. And I just can't, in this environment and trying to be conservative, this budget, if I'm going to save 269, I need to give it back to the taxpayers. It's not a savings unless the taxpayers can put it in their pocket. And that's kind of been my thing going through this. I mean, I've even got another question, but, we can finish this discussion first, is, the original budget proposal had a snowplow in it. What's the purpose for that?
Well, the sheriff did cut that out. Keep in mind that with the
I'm just
June
saying.
11th meeting,
I
it
just-
was, it was something needed. They actually assist our detention staff, our maintenance staff, assist maintenance with clearing certain departments, parking lots, stuff to that nature. So that's something we have been doing on a yearly basis when we do have snow. But the one thing I was going to point out, sir, if you don't mind, that you did speak about restricted funds.
Yeah.
And that's one thing the sheriff has been looking at. So we're not trying to just look at the 313 that it's just hanging out there. He's already looked at body cameras for our patrol divisions, as well as a tactical robot that we've had to give Ashboro Police Department a call in the past and have them come out to assist us. So he's looking at using these funds currently in the future. Just keep that in mind.
And is that the figure, excuse me?
Go ahead.
Is that the figure before or after the money that was used to upgrade the car garage
Right.
that we talked about? Is that before or after that money was
It was actually
taken out
before,
of the,
it was before and after.
The garage
they
update is
didn't
not
use
paid
it for
for.
that.
No, there's nothing in here for the garage.
Well,
Not
you're-
now and hadn't been. Well, yeah,
the restricted funds were never used for the garage. Those funds were elsewhere.
The county paid for that, and
yes.
I don't want
Yep.
to speak out of turn.
It
but,
was, because it had been in noncompliance for 20 years.
correct?
Yep.
But I thought that
The
we
sheriff was
agreed
going to
that
consider.
he was
using
going to consider
force
using
But he didn't.
some of
money.
that,
He didn't.
but he didn't. Okay, that's my question. That wasn't used there for that, okay.
Justin, do you have any, I know this is your fund, your balance in there. Do you have any other additional funds that you think will come into that account?
I
Any
mean-
other seizures or anything? I know it's a shot in the dark.
Speaking to one of our agents, just trying to dictate when or forecast when you're going to receive these funds, it's almost impossible because every case is completely different. Just to give you some insight, this year we had 2 cases where we got funding from 2017 and at least one from 2018. So it just depends. There's no time frame on when we receive these funds.
Do you have a feel for what's out there, though, that you think you might get? I know everybody's got to get their piece of the puzzle and pie, and it's divvied up, but do you just have a rough number? I mean, is it $100,000 a year? Just give us a feel. I'm not going to.
I can say this. This year we've received $121,000 in restricted funds.
Okay.
Will, Is that all in one fund? There's a couple different funds there and some we have to approve.
The restricted money,
Yes,
it's all in the general fund. It's
All-
fund balance.
all of it.
But those monies you're talking about, as I recall a discussion when we were talking about whether we could get that money to help improve the car and, Garage.
It changed the ventilation and put in a firewall.
right, and I understand that. I'm saying that we knew we really needed to do that. But the discussion was, as I recall, was that from the sheriffs that were in place at the time it was done or put into place, they would have used restricted monies, therefore it would have,
The garages were built with restricted money.
that's what I'm saying. So that's why that was put in place. But what you're saying is, we never used restricted monies to do that part. The county paid for it.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So all the restricted monies are still there.
Yeah, but when that mobile unit and Bearcat or what was put in that building, it was out of compliance right then.
Right, and I understand that. I do understand that.
But that's a good point. Those monies were never,
They were never,
that
they were never,
negotiation or whatever with that,
Right.
you know, may consider using some restricted funds, never happened. So, good point.
I assumed it had been. That's what I'm saying.
No.
We did, we talked about it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talked about
and
it.
it was suggested, but
Didn't do it.
it wasn't done.
That's why I asked the question. I assumed it had been, but that's what I was asking.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to leave this particular issue about this 269 and move on to anything else before we
Well,
come
well,
to the...
it's going to be a part of a final budget, so whatever you, we're not leaving anything. Go
Well,
ahead.
I don't want to go on to another topic before we decide. I mean,
Well,
obviously, we're at a little bit, just to be clear, I do not want to spend the money on vehicles. And I have one other thing I do want to spend the money on, but I have some other questions too. So I'll just throw that out there. How about that? So anyway, so one thing in that savings of the 269, if you will, one concern of myself and I think a couple other commissioners has been, we're grossly understaffed at the courthouse as far as bailiffs and everything go. And I would like to earmark a position, which I guess is a sworn position,
Correct.
or a bailiff at the courthouse with that savings of 269 to help those guys and that staff over there. Those ladies and gentlemen, excuse me.
That position is $67,927.
All in.
All in. That's-
60,927.
$67,927. Yes.
But that's just a proposal, so.
Can you elaborate on the need there?
Me?
Mhm.
Well, I can look back at previous budget things. Now, I know myself, and I'll just speak for myself, and several of you have, but, probably of, which I try to stay away from, the jail, because I try to stay out of trouble. But if there's one area in the county that I do use frequently, that, an area that is affected by the sheriff's department, it's the county courthouse. Have to go to the clerk's office and different things. So I'm probably more familiar with that than I would be your vice squad or the health department. But, so in just, frequenting that and everything, I see how overloaded they are. I see how understaffed they are from that standpoint. And just, knowledge of the courthouse and a little bit of that. I know we've added a whole new Superior Court judge, so that's double Superior Court. I know we've added a new District Court judge, so that increases that number by, 15%, arguably, something like that. And I know the caseload, is significantly higher anyhow. And if I look at the other departments within the courthouse, which would be the DA's office, Clerk of Superior Court's office, they have added positions. So, you see the workload growing and the caseload growing and the traffic in the courthouse growing, and, everybody's kind of added on to catch up with that. And actually, I think if we go back at historic numbers, and I hate to put anybody on the spot, but somebody in here that works at the courthouse might know better than me, I think their number cumulatively over the past 2 years has actually gone down. Is that correct? So by 1.5 people, maybe 2. So just looking at the increase in growth over there and.
But we've added a judge.
Yeah.
Well, their workload's also been affected by the virus,
Yeah,
trying
which, you
to
know, hopefully goes away at some
arrange
point. It's
people
really
in and out of the
everything we work-
courthouse and social distancing and keeping them from running all over each other and all that, too.
Yeah.
I mean, crowd control has been an issue.
a bear. And so anyhow, so I'm just familiar with that. And, you know, when you walk in as a layperson, you know, you see somebody, you know, at the door and, you know, they make you put your pocket knife in the car and all those different things. And you walk in a courtroom and there's a bailiff up there beside the judge. But, you know, when you peel that onion back and look, I mean, there's transportation people, there's people down there with, you know, inmates who've been brought up from the jail that have to be constantly supervised depending on what level they are of supervision there, and they're moving people back and forth to all those courtrooms. So it's not just a guy standing in a courtroom all day. You know, there's 15 people running around like crazy behind him, kind of like the duck on the water. You know, the guy that's standing at the door checking in is the top of the duck, and then all the rest of the guys are the feet. So, but anyway, I just think that's a real need, and I'd like to earmark that, if that's possible.
Okay, the only thing we need to keep in mind is that the savings from the vehicles is capital outlay. It's a one-time thing. So the bailiff, that's going to be
It
a
would be
recurring
recurring.
expense.
Gonna be
Which, you
correct.
know, I mean,
That's a good point.
that is a very good point. But I feel like it's very needed.
Was that requested in the budget?
No.
that the sheriff-
Was it?
It was.
Was
The
there one?
original
It was.
request.
Yeah, he
Was
had it-
original?
He had it in the original budget request.
That's-
As a matter of fact, he had two positions.
Correct.
So just trying to find some help.
He had two of them.
So you want to leave the 202 for capital, or you want?
Well, if you take the 260, what's in play, the 269,500 from the hire date change, 21,242 from the uniforms, so it's $290,742 that you could say is in play. The 67,927 for the bailiff would reduce that savings to $222,815. So the question is, do you reduce the appropriated fund balance, which would take it from 903,479 down to 680,664, and by adding the bailiff, and there would be no cars. That's where we are. Then, you know, on, when I say stage 5, we might look at putting some cars back.
In play, yeah. I mean, I think being consistent with, you know, the county manager and the county finance officer and Mr. Chairman, your thing, this stage thing, I just think that's the appropriate thing to do, you know. Let's see how things look.
Yeah, stage 5 is the critical capital requests that weren't funded. And then there is the restricted fund balance. So
Well, I mean,
So that-
if you take that look, you can look at a lot of things in that respect, too. Let's
Yeah.
just go with the manager's budget and see what happens, but
Yeah.
I don't think we need to look at that.
Do remember,
willing-
we can amend
How
the
did-
budget during the year.
Oh, yeah.
amend the budget.
I think we're gonna have to.
Can't change the tax rate.
That's right, can't change the tax
We
rate.
can amend the budget.
You can amend the budget
And a lot of
during
that's
the year.
going to
And
depend
there's
on
no,
the tax.
this
sales
budget
tax.
has no change to the tax rate. So that's the decision. I don't, from our discussions over the last few weeks, discussions tonight, I don't think there's anything else that's in play with the budget.
Well, I have one.
So, and I think if we want to add, if there's a bailiff position, then there's 222,000 that you can use to reduce fund balance appropriated or buy cars. Neither, that would not add, that
That is,
would,
let me clarify, that is using the 37 57 as a figure
Yes.
for
Yes,
uniforms for detention officers.
correct.
Gotcha. And that would get them fully equipped for what they need to do, correct?
Do what?
As sworn officers.
Sworn officers. I would have to make sure that figure's back.
Non-sworn officers.
These are non-sworn.
Yeah.
Right?
The 37, 57
Correct.
are non-sworn officers,
That's what I
Correct.
want to
37,
clarify.
57.
until we run into something. Well, let me just go ahead and ask this question, because I think since we're kind of discussing this automobile thing or whatever, because I'm hung up on a similar word. So in the budget highlight page of your presentation to the county manager originally, there's, second to the last paragraph, finally, our general budget expenses have increased by 546, I'm just rounding off, $546,010. Specifically pertains to salaries, benefits, automotive supplies, professional services, maintenance contracts, utilities, and other general costs. The other costs that you talked about previous to that, like the increase in food service at the jail and the increase in medical, is that included in that number, or this is a different number?
Unless something changed, it should be included in that number.
So,
However, our
for
budget pages
example,
did change.
Increased by $150,000 for food service, ballpark, that's in that 546.
I would have to look at that, sir. The budget pages changed on 2 different occasions, once when we met with the county manager and finance manager,
Yeah,
and
the
then
fi-
once again.
That 546 is not a current true number.
Okay, so there's a new number.
Well, if you look in that same paragraph that you're referring to, it says that his budget has increased by $2,546,064. When you look over at the manager and the Wills budget, it increased by $1,272,953. So
they're
$1.3 million has been taken out of that budget.
So the 546 is already out of it.
A portion of it is out of it.
All right. Well, my question
Look,
about it, just for,
The increase in the jail line item is greater than the increase
in the,
in the total budget,
budget.
and that's because of the cars. That's because of the capital expenditure.
and how did that? Well, let me just ask, because I think this is for clarification, for nothing else for the taxpayers. The one word I'm hung up on in there is automotive supplies, and specifically, you know where I'm going with this, is, we've had a lot of discussion over the past year about this unapproved garage that's going on, and, a lot of comments were made that we're going to save a little north of $150,000 a year by maintaining this garage instead of doing things like we used to. And so, how do we have a proposed increase in automotive supplies if we save the taxpayers $150,000?
Well, I would like to go ahead and state that when you think of automotive supplies, you instantly think about the garage, but there are other things to be considered. The budget the year before, we went over as far as fuel, so that was something that is looked at.
That number.
Do
That
what?
would be in the automotive supply number.
Correct. There's a number of items, repairs. You've got to think about it from a rec standpoint. We've had more wrecks between the 2019-2020 actual year than we've had in a long time.
Which, increase.
So there's more that correlates in that than just the
Than
garage.
just the garage, yeah. I get, okay, well, that's why I wanted to ask you as their finance person, I knew I could get a straight answer from you. I just continue to be concerned that, I hear these reports about how much money we're saving the taxpayers, and I never see a check written to the Randolph County taxpayers for $150,000. But that's not your fault. I'm just saying, it just, and when I'm asking for increases, I feel like, the taxpayer ought to be getting, a savings, because the savings is not a savings unless you put it back in your pocket. But anyway, that's a good explanation. I appreciate it.
And I would like to say one thing, that if you look at our budget from where we started and where we're at today, we have cut costs tremendously. If you actually look on the actual document that I hand out, on the top right-hand corner, you'll see that that's even a third or fourth proposal that we've put in there of potentially saving money so we could throw that towards capital outlay. Now, I know those figures haven't been discussed before, but this is the most I've ever done on any budget as far as re-looking, trying to save money in different areas to get what we need. And I just wanted to make sure that, you all understood
I mean,
that it's
I mean, I do know that you've been asked a million questions and, from the finance department and the sheriff's department, and you've done a great job of trying to find places, and so I appreciate your efforts there doing that. Thank you. So I don't want to be disrespectful of that.
All right. Let's move to a conclusion. We're going to decide, we ask for a motion on the bailiff position.
The motion?
Do you want to add that back?
Yeah, you want a motion?
Do you want to add, if
I would
we
like
want-
to add the bailiff, yes, sir.
Can I have a second?
Form of motion.
I'll second that.
All right, the motion is that we add a bailiff position at $67,927. Discussion. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, bailiff is added. Now, you got $269,500, no, I'm sorry, 290,742 in savings relative to, this is all related to now the vehicles and the cut in the uniform expense. So
I would
we
make a
take
motion that we add that back to fund balance.
less the cost of the bailiff.
Yes, sir. 22,815 to fund balance.
All right. So motion is that the $222,815 be added to fund balance, which would reduce the appropriated fund balance to $680,664. I have a second to the motion.
Before you do that, repeat that one more time. I'm trying to digest your number.
All right. The $269,500 was savings from changing the hire date for the additional
It's 269.
269.5, 21,242 in savings from the uniforms.
Okay,
That's $290,742.
thank you. Okay,
The $67,927 for the bailiff comes out of that money. That leaves $222,815. The motion is to use that to reduce the appropriated fund balance from $903,479 to $680,664. That's the motion.
and that is,
The motion is that the 222,000, I'm just giving you how we got to that number.
yeah,
The motion is that the 222,815 be used
Back in the,
to reduce the appropriated fund balance.
not used on vehicles,
not using on vehicles.
yes.
So there are no vehicles, not one.
I'll second that.
All right, further discussion.
I think we're being a little short-sighted because, like I say, you're just kicking the can down the road and we're going to beat it to death. So, I mean, you can put it in the budget or,
I feel we've got money to buy vehicles with, but I get your point. I mean, I will worry about it, but I think there's money at the sheriff's department to buy vehicles with. $313,000.
Well, you're going to have to approve that, too.
yeah, that comes back to us too.
I'll be glad to.
All right, any
All right.
other discussion?
But the point is well taken.
Well, I mean, like I say, I've been on the tail end of that a little bit, especially on IT type stuff. And when you get behind, you stay behind. So, and I hate to think if these are patrol vehicles, and some of them are, some of them may not be. But I'd hate to think that somebody's going to a call and car breaks down or something like that because it was one of the ones that we didn't replace. But that's my feeling. So,
Good point.
and we're putting enough budget pressure, I think, with the increases in recurring expenses, next year's budget is going to be with nothing added, we would have,
Yep.
Potentially another $4 million shortfall,
That's a 4-cent tax increase.
for the following budgets. Because Will, and I think we talked this week that there will be, you're not anticipating adding anything to fund balance in this year's actual,
At the end of the year, yeah.
we're not looking at,
Yeah, it's a projection at this point, but we're hoping to break even with revenue loss.
right. So there's no, traditionally, we've had a little bit of fund balance that would
Put back in anyway.
go back in.
In the year.
We're not going to have that this year. So, and we're talking about a budget here, not actuals.
Right.
There's a
There's
difference
still
there.
those guesses we talked about.
Yeah. But, and we hadn't even talked about Randolph Health. What may happen there with that wild card.
Yep.
So I think we need to be conservative, but I don't want to put more emphasis and more stress on future budgets.
Further discussion?
So your point is, you feel like it might be wiser to leave the money in place for vehicles this year
Well,
and no vehicles next year? I'm asking David. for
without increasing the appropriated fund balance, the $222,815 for however many cars that would buy.
Yeah.
Now, his original request for vehicles was $875,000. So we've already cut, even at that, we cut $663,000 out of vehicles,
The proposed
out of proposed,
expenditure.
and at the average, 222,000 might buy 5 or 6 cars.
But to answer your question, I think you can buy them now, or you can really buy a lot later. I mean, it's a cumulative effect in some respects.
And my argument is, instead of using this 222 to buy the vehicles, you can use your 313 to buy vehicles. So I'm not saying don't buy vehicles. You
Yeah, I
decide.
get it.
Yeah,
Instead
and I
of
understand that, but
possibility.
Yeah,
if he needs, if he's asking for 800, he may want to use some of that. I'm just thinking that 313 is not going to be a drop in the bucket. And with our current environment, with the body cams, that, he's, kind of earmarked, I mean, I could see that would be a good use of that money too. So, based on our environment that we're living in today.
Well, if we go back and look at our departments and our department requests, nobody's getting what they're asking for, and they need them. There are things they need. There are positions that have been asked for within our,
Yeah, the point I made in the discussion, or the introduction, was there were no capital expenditures, new capital expenditures in this budget.
And really, this
Green.
motion would just set us back to what was originally proposed. As far as
Capital-wise.
vehicles go, Capital-wise.
Yeah, capital-wise. Yes. Yeah, the budget came to us without a single vehicle in it.
yeah, that's true. It
And it's my understanding, if it's a budget request and we don't fund it, it can be eligible for those
Forfeiture.
the drug money that the forfeiture cost.
monies.
All right, any other discussion? So the motion is to reduce the appropriated fund balance by the $222,815. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
All right. So, Will, have you got all those numbers?
That wasn't the entire budget.
No,
No,
Okay, that was just the amendment.
that's right. Yes.
I don't want to go on record, I was against everything.
That's what I was asking if he's, so where would that put our revised total budget?
Total budget is 644. 134, 379, 644.
644?
644.
All right. Do I have a motion to adopt the 2020-21 budget for Randolph County at $134,379, $379,644, and set the tax rate at 60, keep the tax rate at the current 63.27 cents.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a budget. So we got a place to start, and we hope for good news as we go forward. And thank all of you for your participation. I do want to say we had a virtual state county commissioners board meeting yesterday afternoon, and went for almost 5 hours, and a lot of good information. The one thing I do want to let the commissioners know, and the citizens, that when the CARES Act was passed a month or so ago, and we got the $2.5 million, part of that process, the state put $150 million into a reserve. Well, the legislation went through the House today, and the Senate passed, and they released that $150 million with the stipulation that 25% of it has to go to the municipalities for COVID-19 expenses. So we'll probably have some discussion, but Will and I talked before the meeting that go ahead and distribute that 25%. You know, we put $100,000 in our budget for municipalities. We would take that back and go ahead and distribute on a per capita basis the 25% to our 7 municipalities and let them keep up with their own expenses and revenues. Another provision in that bill allots $2.5 million for Randolph Hospital, but it comes to Randolph County. It does not go directly to the hospital. So just make you aware that there's some other
What
things.
strings are attached to that?
Well,
Or do you know?
don't know, but Representative Hurley and McNeil, they're going to send me a copy of it, but it could be related to COVID-19 expenses.
The 2.5.
No, yes, for the hospital money. Yes. Yep.
But that's for the county to be able to administer.
Correct. And maybe, we've had some problems getting some testing and some cooperation from the hospital relative to new detainees being brought in. Isn't that right, Justin?
Correct, sir. I believe it was earlier this week or last week where Susan Hayes with the Health Department had contacted me about that,
Yes.
and I was able to work with her on that. So.
As a result, we had a detainee that tested positive, and he was not admitted to the jail, but the 2 jailers that brought him in had to be quarantined for 14 days.
Where was the detainee tested? Run that by me one more time. At Randolph
Well,
Health.
where this started a couple, 3 weeks ago, see, if a municipality, they arrest somebody midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, they bring them to the county jail.
Sure,
We don't want to put them in there with 300 people.
exactly, with COVID,
With a virus.
sure.
So we tried to get them tested at the hospital, and took over an hour, hour and a half before they finally agreed to do it. Well, this past week, we had another one that didn't get tested. And when they finally did and got the
Are you saying
results,
another detainee?
he did have the virus, He was not put into the detention center, so the rest of the census was okay, but the 2 officers who brought him and with him had to be quarantined for 14 days. So they lose manpower for
Were they,
2 weeks.
was he checked at the hospital or where was the detainee tested?
The specific individual you're talking about, I'm not sure. I heard something about dealing with Highway Patrol had brought somebody in, and that in return, they had to search them, which ended up getting them exposed to it. But that's all I know.
I will say, I think the sheriff sent Will, or he's sending Will, a proposal or idea for a scanner at the jail. And he thought would use forfeit money to pay for that. But we also think that it's eligible for COVID-19.
Okay.
It's I think the rapid test where you get
It's the rapid,
results
yes.
within 30 minutes
Yes.
rather than having to send it off and
So
get
we
it
can
back 2 days
control
later.
it in-house.
But that could be at the detention center.
At the detention, it'll be on site, and it would be eligible for that 2.6 million of CARES Act money that we have for COVID-19 expenses.
This proposal is for a scanner, it's not testing.
No, it's not a test, it's a scanner like you go through at the airport
Oh, okay. Oh, well,
to prevent the bodily
Contact.
contact that goes with that
Gotcha.
let your imagination go, what that's like.
Like he had something to do.
I see.
All right, any other business? Thank all of you again for your patience, being a part of this process for the last month. Our viewers at home, thank all of you for your interest in county government. And I'll say again, I'll be glad when you're here with us. And, but we do thank you again for your patience as we go through this process. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, all right, well. Hey, Larry, how you doing?
Thank you.
You get all those budget details? You get all those budget
Doing all right?
details?
See ya.
Yeah.
Gotcha.